Matt as a civilian. Right, okay, councillors, we're going to move on. Councillors, I draw your attention to the notice of motion at item 5B on the agenda. Councillor Cassidy, can you please read your motion?
Yes. I move that this council notes with sadness the recent fatality of a cyclist on Nudgee Road at Hendra and commits to enacting any and all safety improvements on Nudgee Road to ensure safety for all road users.
Seconded.
It has been moved by Councillor Cassidy and seconded by Councillor Collier that this council notes with sadness the recent fatality of a cyclist on Nudgee Road at Hendra and commits to enhancing any and all safety improvements on Nudgee Road to ensure safety for all road users. Councillor Cassidy, you've got the call.
Thanks very much, Deputy Chair. First of all, I would like to place on record Labor's sincerest condolences to the family of Philip Pawsey, who passed away last week. This tragic incident on Nudgee Road last week saw a life taken, family and friends shattered, and a community asking why. Our thoughts are with those who are suffering through this loss at the moment. The LNP's track record of inaction of cyclist safety across Brisbane is nothing short of shameful. Too often, the Lord Mayor and his administration have refused to act on cyclist safety across the city. They've slashed projects in recent months, like the North Brisbane Bikeway, making our roads less safe for all users. Residents have presented two separate petitions to Council, one in 2020 and the most recent in January 2022, calling for action on Nudgee Road. The most disappointing part of each of these responses is that neither responded to the issues raised. The responses outlined why Council couldn't do anything, that it would be difficult, it would be costly, it would be complex, or that there was no funding allocated. Sounds familiar. They also blamed a state government manual, or that it would be inconvenient for motorists who would lose some on-street parking. It's been reported there have been previous incidents at this intersection, the intersection where this fatality occurred, with cyclists being taken to hospital. In the last 10 years, my understanding is there's been 26 incidents with cyclists on Nudgee Road. 17 have resulted in hospitalisations, and now there has been a death, and that's one too many. Simply announcing new green bridges like the Kangaroo Point Bridge does not let the LNP off the hook when it comes to providing safe cycling infrastructure across the rest of our city and the 190 suburbs that make up Brisbane. Cyclists should not fear for their lives when commuting for whatever reason, whether it's for work, exercise or just to get around their communities. Brisbane deserves an administration that will do the heavy lifting when it comes to the real delivery of safe and accessible active transport options on council roads. Council should be conducting a thorough investigation following this incident and proactively coming up with solutions. There will of course be an ongoing police investigation and potentially further investigations, maybe something like a coronial inquest. But one thing is clear, one thing is really clear. There are safety improvements that need to occur here and at many other locations across Brisbane. It's not like the LNP administration wasn't approached about issues here. We know that they have seen the number of incidents that have occurred on Nudgee Road over the last 20 years. We know that they have looked at those previous two petitions. We know that Councillor Murphy was at the Active Transport Committee with the state government and users where this was raised as well. So we know that this administration was warned about safety issues on Nudgee Road. So what we're calling for today is something really simple for Council to put on record its condolences to the family of the gentleman who passed away, and a clear and unequivocal commitment to carrying out any and all safety improvements on Nudgee Road, and a genuine commitment to carrying out safety upgrades and active transport infrastructure across Brisbane. We're not saying what particular safety upgrade needs to be enacted, at what particular time, and how much money needs to be allocated, because that will obviously need to be worked out through the course of investigations. But what we're saying is today we need to make an unequivocal commitment here in Council that we, as Council, will carry out safety upgrades to make sure this never ever happens again. Brisbane cannot claim to be a clean and green city, as the LNP likes to continue to say in 2023, when there is third world infrastructure in the suburbs of Brisbane that has now potentially led to the death of a cyclist. So today's motion is quite simple, and I'm sure something that everyone can support.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Any further speakers? Councillor McLaughlin.
Oh, thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. I also rise to contribute to debate on this motion and support the Leader of the Opposition's condolences to the family of Mr Pawsey for his untimely death earlier this week, and also for other cyclists, Mr Deputy Chair, who've passed away in not dissimilar circumstances. Rebecca Meyer in 2014 and Ryan Goff in 2018, an employee of the Local Government Association of Queensland, and Carolyn Lister, a constituent of mine who passed away at O'Connell Terrace, and now Philip Pawsey, all in similar circumstances, Mr Deputy Chair, of coming into contact with a turning truck, it would appear. And I note that the petition to which the Leader of the Opposition referred was supported by everyone in this place, including the opposition. So the recommendation of the officers in relation to the petition which addressed the issue of road safety along an 11-kilometre stretch of road from Kingston Smith Drive all the way through to Nudgee Beach, and goes through many different circumstances on that journey. The area, I guess, in close question, said this in the petition response, and it wasn't a won't do anything, which is how it's been categorised by some commentators in the media in the last few days. It was specific to different elements along that reasonably complicated road through residential and industrial area, and which is also a major freight road. But it said this, and there are elements of this that have been done. The upgrades are dependent on acquiring the land required from adjacent properties as development occurs along the corridor. On-road bicycle lanes are also being installed as part of intersection upgrades, such as Kingston Smith Drive in 2019, Hampton Street and Mean Street in 2017, and Tufnell Road in 2016. Now, anybody who knows that section of road, who's journeyed from heading north, if you're heading north on Nudgee Road, passed over the railway line heading towards the airport link intersection, knows that a significant development occurred there a couple of years ago now on the land owned by the Brisbane Racing Club for a new shopping centre. And that's precisely what's being talked about here in terms of providing a 4-lane corridor along Nudgee Road to provide for public and active safety improvements along this stretch of road. But it is, and that was a consequence of the development application that was put in by the Brisbane Racing Club to develop that site there on their land at the Racing Club adjacent on the opposite side from Doomben Racetrack. And that's precisely what the officers are talking about here in this petition response that the ALP agreed to when this petition came through the committee, that said this is how you can make the improvements. Now, I have been concerned looking at some of the commentary, Mr Deputy Chair, in recent times about the attempts, unfortunately, to rewrite a narrative in relation to this particular incident, which is really unfortunate, and it shouldn't occur. It shouldn't occur while there's an active investigation underway into a fatality. But I've talked to the local police, and despite the commentary that has been made by some in responding to this incident, saying it's a consequence of parked cars, or what some of those lobbyists call the storage of private property on public spaces. That wasn't what occurred in this circumstance, so the police told me, which I know is still subject to further investigation. But it appears that, unfortunately, the cyclist and the truck were heading in the same direction, south, and the truck turned in front of the cyclist into a side street, perhaps unexpectedly, but at a bus stop on the corner of Nudgee Road and Long Street. So no parked cars, involved at all in this incident. But it will be the subject of further investigation. That will be the subject of coronial inquiries, and a response will be provided. But looking at those previous events that have occurred, there's been a common theme to all of those where a cyclist has met a fatal accident in regards to a truck. And this is the report on my constituent's death, Carolyn Lister, in July 2020. Bicycle community says failure to act on coroner's advice cost Carolyn Lister her life. And it said this, and it was reflecting on the coronial inquiry into the death of student Rebecca Meyer, said this, made, and I'm quoting, Coroner Chris Clements made several recommendations to ensure the safety of cyclists, including changes to truck technology, to make sure that trucks, which is technology that's been attached to trucks elsewhere in Europe in particular, this can't happen where a cyclist could be caught by a turning truck. That's been the recommendation of coroners past, and I can't preempt what might happen in an investigation into this particular incident, but I do flag, Mr Deputy Chair, an amendment to this motion. And I'd like to, this is the amendment, after the words safety improvements, insert the words recommended by coronial investigation, so that the motion would read that this council notes with sadness the recent fatality of a cyclist on Nudgee Road at Hendra and commits to enacting any and all safety improvements recommended by coronial investigation on Nudgee Road to ensure safety for all road users. And I move that amendment, Mr Deputy Chair.
A second. We need a seconder, please.
Seconded.
So it has been moved by Councillor McLaughlin to amend the motion to read, after the following words, safety improvements, insert the words recommended by colonial investigation. The motion will now read that this council note with sadness the recent fatality of a cyclist on Nudgee Road at Hendra and commits to enhancing any and all safety improvements recommended by the coronial investigation on Nudgee Road to ensure safety for all road users. To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. Look, just further to the amended motion, the reports of previous incidents have said this consistently, that semi-trailers and trucks need to have under-run protection, limited side and peripheral vision, and technology to alert motorists to blind spot risks. This was the commentary of the head of Cycling Queensland at the time, Anne Savage, who said this after the unfortunate death of Mr Ryan Goff in 2018 at Albion, who said that we've written to the state government to ask for the creation of a road safety and travel commission and an increase in funding. We'd like to see a compliance unit on a statewide level with the state cycling infrastructure policy, and we need to see the reform of heavy vehicle laws. And also Narelle Horwath from the Centre for Accident Research and Road Safety Queensland, CARS-Q, said Australia was behind other parts of the world when it came to safety laws for heavy vehicles. In Europe, they have, and this is a quote, in Europe they have strong requirements that ensures heavy vehicles have side underrun and rear underrun. She said, side underruns prevent cyclists and pedestrians from going underneath the wheels of a heavy vehicle and being killed. We should adopt those laws. They're a federal government responsibility, end of quote. Also requires input from state transport ministers, and I call on our state transport minister to adopt these principles that have been talked about now for several years to ensure the safety of cyclists in particular on our roads.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Are there further speakers to the amendment?
Yeah, look, briefly, I mean,
Cassidy.
obviously the LNP have the numbers, they're going to change and they're going to do this. But I will just reflect on the fact that Councillor McLaughlin didn't talk at all about road upgrades on Council's Road, on Nudgee Road, on any part about that. his amendment sure will support that. There's clearly going to be an investigation, and it says even his amended motion that all upgrades on Nudgee Road. But again, there's just this undercurrent of shifting blame. It's just saying, well, this is clearly, he's sort of preempting things, saying there is only going to be issues around trucks. And he's preempting that and setting the scene to say that, again, the LNP won't commit to any upgrades to council's infrastructure, council cycling infrastructure. He said that through the 4-laning of Nudgee Road at some point, who knows when this LNP council will get to that. It's not a project that's currently there. The infrastructure chair said just 5 minutes ago that council's broke. It doesn't have any money to do upgrades on council roads. So the LNP's position is that, I guess now, is that if a coronial inquest recommends upgrades on council's road, they'll do it. But apart from that, the answer is no to any form of cycling infrastructure upgrades on Nudgee Road. You know, they got formed, they cut the North Brisbane Bikeway. They're now again saying no to upgrading cycling infrastructure on Nudgee Road. So sure, I mean, to make this a little quicker, we'll support the amendment today because I do think we should put on record our condolences and commit to safety upgrades. It shouldn't be so narrowed and so buttonholed. But you know, that's the LNP way, I guess, and you know, those out in that community will see this and will know this and be reminded of the LNP's real position when it comes to active transport in Brisbane.
Further speakers to the amendment? Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you. I don't believe the amendment's necessary. I appreciate why Councillor Cassidy wants to push on, but I want to put on the record my concerns about how this administration fails to address, in practical terms, deaths that are occurring on our footpaths and our roads. Waiting for a coronial investigation could take 2 or 3 years before any recommendations are made. The process generally involves the coroner asking council to make a submission and then the coroner taking that advice into account, along with other advice that the coroner will seek, presumably from other levels of government and vehicle user groups and family and others. So it's not just council. But council will make the suggestions about what, if anything, should be changed. So what Councillor McLaughlin is doing today by moving this amendment is simply deliberately delaying council taking action following the death of a cyclist on local roads in Brisbane. I don't think that's good enough. I know this is the way the LNP administration operate because I had to sit through a 3-year wait for council to recommend pretty much nothing when it came to the death of Dr. Jeff Copeland on Venner Road at Annerley. It caused untold pain to his family that council has done nothing to address safety concerns in that area. We haven't even resurfaced Venner Road and it's in a shocking state at the moment. There's no lights, there's no safe crossing point, nothing's been done to address the speed reduction that we want on Venner Road. I mean, they want to save koalas by reducing the speed on a road near Whites Hill, but meanwhile pedestrians who have died on a road that could easily be changed from 60 to 50 don't get the same consideration. So I don't support the amendment. The decision to delay council's response to the death of a member of our community is not good enough in my view. Council should do an investigation. It should put changes in place. There is absolutely nothing stopping council from doing this. And in fact, the coroner will acknowledge in any report and findings that it makes that council has already made changes, and that often happens particularly with the state government. So it is again another example of this LNP administration who have absolutely lost their way. They want somebody else to take the lead on something that is their responsibility because they are too lazy to do the work themselves. Get on with it, put the safety improvements in place that will do the investigation, put the safety improvements in place that are needed, provide all that advice to the coroner, and then hopefully there may only be one or two more things that the coroner wants us to do. Don't delay. I don't want to see more pedestrians or cyclists in our city die. This council knows what it should be doing, and it shouldn't take more people dying and a coroner telling council what to do for council to act. Council is not restricted in taking action to improve safety, and it shouldn't be hiding behind the coroner to do so. So I don't support the amendment. I think we should just get on with this and get these safety improvements done instead of this silly game to delay any improvements that council might decide are needed.
Further speakers to the amendment? Seeing none, Councillor McLaughlin, right of reply. So we will now put the amendment. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? No. The ayes have it.
Division, Trina. Division.
Well, we have a
second.
We have a division. We had councillors. We have a division called by Councillor Johnson and seconded by Councillor Massey. Please ring the bells. Councillors, please, bit of shush. Councillor Marks. Dorian, who's missing? Just yelling? Yeah, let's call it. Clerks, please read the result.
Mr Chair, the ayes have it, the voting being 17 in favour, 2 against and 4 abstentions.
The amendment has carried and is now the substantive motion. Is there any debate on the substantive motion? Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. I think I'll just need my time reset. It says 4 minutes. Thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. I rise to speak in favour of the motion as amended by Councillor McLaughlin, and like many councillors, I was deeply saddened to learn of the tragic loss of Philip Pawsey on Nudgee Road. It goes without saying no cyclist should die on our roads. This amended motion will ensure that council commits to reviewing and implementing any recommendations that come as a result of an investigation into this tragedy. We will fully cooperate with the Queensland Police Service and potentially the Coroner's Office if an inquest is ordered. I must say though, Deputy Chair, it has been quite unfortunate that there's harmful and frankly some indecent commentary about this accident prior to a proper investigation by authorities being finalised. We have seen some what I can only describe as politically motivated comments that have come from bug groups, from the opposition in this chamber that have attempted to politicise, to shame and to denigrate this council and its employees over this incident. This is in fact the same opposition that supported the administration's recommendation to the Infrastructure Committee when that Nudgee Road petition came to council last year. Now they've changed their mind, as they often do. That's okay. But Councillor Cassidy said earlier today in the chamber that words matter. So when individuals say things like this council has blood on its hands, and when you have a state transport minister who engages with this type of inflammatory commentary, it is seriously hurtful, and it's demoralising to the hundreds of employees who work for council in this space, rolling out bike lanes, building projects that help people move around our city, or delivering behaviour change programs in the cycling space. And again, this is before we have any reliable information about the incident, and even before Philip's family and friends have had the opportunity to give him the honour of a funeral. It's important to note, Deputy Chair, that this administration has a very difficult task of retrofitting a city that is primarily designed around car travel for other modes like e-mobility and cycling. We are trying to change how people move around our city, and that requires a long and a significant investment pipeline to retrofit our existing network. We are committed to that change. In this financial year alone, we will spend $207 million on active transport infrastructure to help people move around our city. This council used to spend $120 million in a 4-year period on active transport infrastructure. We're going to double that, almost double that in this financial year alone, Chair. And in the last year of Labor government in our city, we spent $5 million on active transport. So it is, we are investing very, very significant amounts. We know that it's not enough for some people, but it is extreme amounts that we are investing. And that, by the way, doesn't include the active transport contribution from road projects, which are often denigrated in this place. Projects in Councillor Wines' portfolio like Moggle Road, Priestdale Road, Newman-Wecker Road, Rickett Road and Molly Road that include very significant active transport components as well. Many of these projects have included significant on-road and off-road cycling facilities, which are not included in the numbers I'm talking about. Council has delivered many separated bike lanes over the last few years that have supported protected cycling, like the Woolloongabba Bikeway, like CityLink Cycleway. Chair, would you believe only a decade ago, a third of our city's bikeways were off-road, but this administration has increased that amount to over 50% now. So over 50%. We know that we can do more. We know we do need to do more when it comes to delivering more effective active transport infrastructure. But in recent times, our revenue stream has been hit hard by several economic factors: the pandemic, the $300 million flood bill, record inflation rates that have increased exponentially the cost of materials, and have caused $300 million in budget increases across, $400 million, I should say, of budget increases across major projects. We have had to cut the cloth to fit. And that means we have probably not been able to deliver as many active transport projects across the city as we would have liked, certainly not as many as I would have liked. This has meant that some projects have had to be deferred, but I can assure residents that under this Lord Mayor, we will continue to deliver a record amount of safer and better protected active transport routes. Nonetheless, Deputy Chair, we are aware of the risks that cyclists take on our roads, and we have seen fatalities in the last decade. There are names that many in this chamber will be familiar with: Rebecca Meyer, Carolyn Lister, Max McDowell, to name a few. We remember their names. None of these cyclists should have lost their lives doing what they loved, but sadly they did. And it weighs very heavily on our conscience that their deaths occurred on a road network that we control. In each case, there's been an inquest or an investigation, and where we have been given recommendations to act on, we have acted fully and without complaint. The 2015 coronial inquest into Rebecca Meyer's tragic death recommended that Council engage with bicycle representative groups to investigate, plan and develop more dedicated exclusive bikeways in Brisbane. And in terms of investigating and planning, we've done exactly that through the creation of ATAC, the Active Transport Advisory Committee. And this body has achieved a lot in terms of helping guide Council's priorities. We've had great wins like CityLink Cycleway and our e-mobility strategy and the Active Transport Network Plan. But it really does hurt itself and its reputation and its mission as an independent and apolitical advisory group when the co-chair, Minister Bailey, and many of its members have engaged in a political pylon of council, and often do so whenever there is a cyclist fatality in this city. I often wonder, should Councillor Wines get together with the RACQ and call out the Minister every time there's a road fatality in our city as a failing of the road network? No, that is not the way we should act. It's unhelpful, it's unproductive, and it's incredibly hurtful to the many people in this organisation who are striving to improve things for cyclists in our city when they read comments like, "You have blood on your hands." And many of our staff have actually been quite upset by that, Chair. I want to reiterate, Council has always acted on recommendations made by coroners. We always seek to improve safety on our roads where issues arise. We showed that when we delivered the Woolloongabba Bikeway to replace the intersection of Annerley Road and Stanley Street after Rebecca Meyer's death in 2015. We showed that with improvements we've already made, and Councillor Wines has made around O'Keefe Street following the tragic death of Max McDowell. And should this latest incident be subject to coronial investigation, we'll absolutely act on any recommendations made, Deputy Chair. But let me reiterate, there is no form of transport in this city that is without risk. Even if we had a decade of $100 billion budgets, we would not be able to make our city accident-free, and we certainly don't have access to those kinds of resources, Deputy Chair. And infrastructure is only one piece of the puzzle that contributes to safety on our roads. We need to pair infrastructure solutions with regulations and technology to help us make cycling safer for residents. Both infrastructure and technology have to work hand in hand. The 2015 inquest into Rebecca Myers' death recommended that Council deliver more dedicated bikeways in Brisbane, and we have done that. We continue to do that. It also recommended that trucks be fitted with appropriate technologies to warn the driver of any obstacles within the forward blind spot of a truck. That was 8 years ago, Deputy Chair, and sadly nothing has been done to act on that recommendation. Deputy Chair, that technology is truck blind spot assistance sensors. They existed 8 years ago in 2015 when the inquest made recommendations. They still exist today, and nothing has been done to mandate them in South East Queensland. Our state's Transport Minister was very quick to jump on Facebook in the wake of this tragic death at Nudgee and attack Council on cycling infrastructure, but he has spent 8 years doing nothing when it comes to truck blind spot sensors, and he's been the Transport Minister that whole time. In the meantime, we have banned plastic straws, we have banned plastic bags, and yet we haven't had this life-saving law change. So I think, Deputy Chair, it's high time that South East Queensland be the first region in the country to mandate these truck sensors. So I really want to see something positive immediately come out of this death. We know that that was a recommendation made at the inquest in 2015 to Rebecca Myers. So this is a coronial recommendation already made. So we don't need to wait for the recommendation from this latest death to come down. And I imagine, Chair, given it was a truck and a cyclist incident, we don't know yet whether it involves a blind spot, but we know that recommendation continues to be outstanding from that inquest in 2015. So this amended motion will ensure that we learn from Philip Pawsey's tragic loss and undertake work to prevent such a tragedy from happening again in the future. We still do not have all the details, we still do not have any recommendations, but if and when there is, we will act as we always have. As we always have.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Your time has expired. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Johnson.
Yes, I rise to speak on the substantive motion now it's been amended. Firstly, my views about the amendment are on the public record already. This is an unnecessary addition to the motion in my view. And Councillor Murphy hit the nail on the head when he was speaking a little bit earlier, which is what if there isn't an inquest? So based on this, Council will do nothing. That's the amendment they put forward. So I'm sure there will be an inquest, but if there isn't for whatever reason, the LNP is limiting Council's ability to respond to the tragic death of this cyclist. Now again, it's not required. Council could and should take action now to investigate and look at what improvements can be made straight away. What we're hearing though from Councillor Murphy as well as Councillor Wines is that no, it's somebody else's responsibility to look into this, and oh yes, also it's a state government's responsibility to do this. That is what's going on with this LNP administration, rather than accepting as the two responsible chairs for this area that it is Council's obligation to do its own work and to take the positive and proactive steps necessary to improve safety for cyclists. Instead, these guys want to go on the snooze, wait for 2 or 3 years for the coroner to say, hey Council, what do you think we should do? And then Council go, oh yeah, we should really make a submission. I mean, for God's sake, get on and do it now. I note that the Chair was talking about how Council is investing all this money into bikeways. Well, certainly not out my way. But secondly, that they're building more and more dedicated bikeways. Now, the one thing that is happening in my, and I've never had a bikeway built in my ward, never. They've painted some yellow bikes on the road, but in the 15 years I've been a councillor, this council has never built a bikeway in my area. This year in the budget, there was $80,000 listed under bikeway and footpath reconstruction for footpath upgrades in Stephen Street, Yeronga. And anyway, about a week and a half ago, I got a letter saying we're going to remove the separated pedestrian and bikeway path through Lloyd Rees Park in Yeronga. And I'm like, what the is this? Council already has a separated bike path from the pedestrian path. There's 7 trees separating it. This council wants to actually join them all together. So the 2,000 residents...
Point of order, Deputy Chair.
Point of order, Councillor Murphy.
I appreciate Councillor Johnson thinks everything in council is like a GB opportunity, but like this is quite a specific amended motion. It's about a specific incident. I don't know why.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Johnson, to the amended motion, please. You've got the floor.
Sure, but I mean the Councillor Murphy spoke at length about bikeways all over the city and how much money they were putting in, and that didn't seem to be a problem, Mr Deputy Chair. So I'm just making the point that what Councillor Murphy has been publicly saying is not true, is not true. As we speak today, this administration is trying to remove a separated pedestrian and bikeway pathway in Yeronga. And the way I was notified, and I'm presuming local residents, maybe, I don't even know if the Bugs were notified, I got a flyer that went out to the public. No one even bothered to talk to me about it. This LNP's absolute inaction when people die is incredible. Now, there have been 2 cyclists killed in my ward in recent years, one last year at the corner of Hyde Road and Fairfield Road, and another in 2020 on the corner of Faith Street and Canumba Street. Has council done anything at those locations? No. And at the Fairfield Road, Hyde Road intersection, we have been pushing for many years to have the green crossing signal directly between the bikeway and the park, which is part of the bikeway. Council said no, 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 no. It's something that everybody's wanted. Cars first, council has said. Well, I hope that's going to change now. Someone has died. Council has not done a single thing when residents who are either cyclists or pedestrians have died in my ward. And it is horrific to see the inaction continuing today.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Are there any further speakers? I see no one rising. We will now put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.